What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about some of the best buy low trade targets heading into week 7 of the NFL season. If you guys enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button, subscribe. If you have any fantasy questions, you can drop them down below. I'll make sure to get back to every single person. But let's just dive right into my first buy low player here, and it is going to be Travis Etienne. There's really no way around it here. Etienne has been a colossal bust through 6 weeks here. He was drafted in round 2. You were expecting him to give you, top 10 production at the running back position. That has not happened. He is the running back 37 in points per game. He is averaging under 10 PPR points per game. And I'm not buying low on Etienne here, expecting him to deliver the production, heading into the season where he was drafted with a round 2 ADP. Like, that's not what I'm expecting here. That's probably not going to happen. But yesterday's price is not today's price. The price, his value, before the season is nowhere near what it is right now. I feel like, his value has pretty much cratered at this point. But I do believe that Etienne is a talented player. And I think pretty much everything that could have gone wrong for him has gone wrong to start off the season. You start off with Tank Bigsby, the current running back 2 for the Jaguars, I guess now running back 1. With Travis Etienne injured, but he went from completely unplayable in 2023 as a rookie to now being one of the most efficient running backs in the NFL. He's first in rushing yards over expected per attempt, so that's a tough break for Travis Etienne. You also look at this Jaguars offense. You could have made the argument, got yourself excited about them taking a leap here. That has not happened. They've been brutal. And then Travis Etienne himself has been pretty banged up, was limited week 5 with a shoulder injury, carried that injury into week 6, and then he leaves early week 6 with a hamstring injury, and he is now being talked about as week to week. So you factor in the bad performance, the injury, the value, definitely has fallen off here for Travis Etienne. And I have to imagine that whoever drafted him, Etienne's owner here, has got to be fed up at this point. They probably started him in week 6, hoping for a nice bounce back, a true breakout game. They woke up early Sunday morning to watch him, in the early slate game. I think they were in London. And then Etienne, they had to watch him go out and put up negative points, scored in the negatives before he left with that injury. So they would have been better off starting me in their lineup. They would have been better off leaving it empty as opposed to playing Travis Etienne. And if you completely swing and miss on your round 2 pick, the record's probably not looking great. They might be sitting after this week at 0-6, 1-5, 2-4. They're probably not in a position where they can wait a couple of weeks for Etienne to get healthy. And then even then, they're hoping he kind of gets back to what they drafted him to be. So I think at this point, the Etienne owner's probably going to be selling him for very, very low. They're going to want to move off of him. They're going to be done with him. Here is where I have optimism, though, when it comes to Travis Etienne. Like I said at the top, I do still believe he is a good player. He's a very solid pass catcher, definitely the best pass catcher they have in this current Jaguars backfield. And he's actually been a pretty decent runner in 2024. It's kind of been overshadowed because Tank Bigsby has been so good and has been so top tier. But he has been solid. His next-gen rushing stats are solid. Rushing yards over expected, rushing yards over expected per attempt. He did struggle with his rushing efficiency in 2023, but he was also really, really good in 2022 when he kind of had a smaller workload, which is, I guess, a little bit more similar to what we've seen so far in 2024. So I don't really think he's played all that poorly to start off the season. I also don't think the Jaguars are quite as high on Tank Bigsby as maybe people think they are, or honestly, maybe that they should be, because like I said, he's been a super efficient runner to start off the season. He's leading the NFL in rushing yards over expected per attempt, but Dearness Johnson was actually the dude who came in and took more opportunities than Tank Bigsby. After Travis Etienne left, he more than doubled Tank Bigsby's snaps. He more than tripled Tank Bigsby's routes. And maybe it's a game script thing. They think he's the better pass blocker, pass catcher. Maybe, but I feel like the Jaguars are going to be in a lot of trailing game scripts. So the fact that Tank Bigsby didn't just dominate the usage after Etienne went down, I think it's a decent sign for Travis Etienne because it doesn't seem like Tank Bigsby is going to get that opportunity to just completely take over the backfield. It seems like they just don't even want him in that role. They don't want to even explore the possibility of him being the workhorse without Travis Etienne. So once Etienne can get healthy, if it's in a couple of weeks, that would be cool. I still think he can be a solid fantasy running back 2 with high-end RB2 upside. Maybe rest of season, once he's healthy, he can squeak in as a back-end RB1, but that's probably pushing it. I just think you're going to get someone overreacting in his healthy games. He's still been a fine RB2 play. So if someone's going to give him away for close to nothing or just completely panic on him, I would be willing to buy low here on Travis Etienne. Then we're going to be looking at a tight end here, and it is going to be David Njoku. It's been a pretty rough start for Njoku to start off the season. He suffered a high ankle sprain in week 1, so he left that game early. He came back week 5, but then he left week 5 early with a new knee injury, returns week 6, ends up leading the team with 7 targets, goes 5 for 31. Nothing crazy here. His production hasn't been super startable to start off the season, but I do think he's interesting moving forward. We'll start off by getting the obvious out of the way here. This Browns offense is terrible. Deshaun Watson is terrible. The offensive line is rough. And I've been someone who, if you've been watching my videos, I've been very out on Amari Cooper, pretty much after like week 1, week 2. I got a lot of heat for listing him as a sell high after his big week 3. So you might be wondering, how can you be out on Amari Cooper, but in on a guy like David Njoku? And it really just comes down to the fact that the bar is a whole lot lower at the tight end position for fantasy than it is at wide receiver. So if you're a tight end, you can average like 10 PPR points per game and you'll be a stud tight end here in 2024. That's just what the tight end landscape looks like. Whereas as a wide receiver, like 10 PPR points per game is just not going to be getting it done. So I think in a bad offense, Njoku has a better shot of being fantasy relevant, or at least, a decent starting option compared to Amari Cooper. You look at this Browns offense, since they are typically trailing, the passing volume hasn't been all that bad. They're averaging 33 attempts per game, which, like I said, it's fine. With Watson at quarterback, I do think Njoku could earn a solid number of targets. He can make some plays after the catch. He led all tight ends in YAC last season, so he's not going to be a super high ADOT guy. I think he could be an interesting dump-off option for Deshaun Watson, make some plays, after he gets the ball. And I do think he could be serviceable in that role. But I think we also have to mention the clear upside that could be here with David Njoku. I know Kevin Stefanski keeps locking in Deshaun Watson as the starter, but this team is 1-5. Deshaun Watson on a decent, number of pass attempts per game, like I said, 33 attempts a game. He has not hit a single 200-yard passing game. That is unbelievably terrible. You look at their upcoming schedule. They have the Bengals, the Ravens. Those both look like losses. Then they have the Chargers, Saints, Steelers. Those aren't insane teams, but those are still tough matchups here. If they lose a couple more games, 2-3 more games, if you're Kevin Stefanski, how can you continue to play Deshaun Watson without just completely losing the locker room? They can want to play Watson because they don't want to admit that the trade was one of the worst ones in NFL history. But you at least need the locker room to somewhat rally around the quarterback. And I don't know if you're going to be getting that if you're looking at this team at 1-7, 1-8 with Deshaun Watson continuing to play terribly. I do think we get to see Jameis Winston at around mid-season, and that just unlocks a whole new ceiling for David Njoku. You go from a guy who's probably giving you fringe tight end 1 production with Watson to now having the upside of being a legitimate top 3 tight end. I do think that's in the range of outcomes once Jameis Winston takes over. We know he's going to chuck it around. We saw David Njoku absolutely feast with Joe Flacco towards the end of last year, so I do believe in the talent of David Njoku. He just needs the quarterback situation to shake up here. But even if it doesn't, I still think he's fine as a tight end option, and I think the value is low enough where his floor is probably where he's being valued at this point, but he also has just this potential upside that I don't think people are factoring in because the Browns do seem to just be locked in on Deshaun Watson. But like I said, I don't know how long you can roll with Deshaun Watson before everyone on this team just completely turns on the coaching staff and on Watson, himself. And then the final buy low player for me here is going to be Ladd McConkey. And this is an interesting spot here because Ladd McConkey hasn't really been tearing it up fantasy-wise, but I'm already very confident that he is and will be a very, very good NFL wide receiver. The question is just, can this offense support him here in 2024? He's averaging 10.6 PPR points per game. In 5 games, he's been targeted 32 times, caught 19 of those for 219 yards and 2 touchdowns. Coming into week 6, so through his first, 4 games, he was PFF's 12th highest rated wide receiver. Now, PFF ratings, I know they're controversial, they're grades. Some people don't love them. But rookie wide receivers who perform well per PFF, like the track record is very, very strong for those guys. So he was the second highest graded rookie wide receiver, right behind Malik Neighbors. He was graded ahead of a guy like Brian Thomas Jr., ahead of a Marvin Harrison Jr. And so Ladd McConkey, in a small sample size, has been very solid to start off his NFL career. The issue is that through 4 games, it seemed like the Chargers had kind of neutered Justin Herbert. Like he maxed out through 4 weeks at 27 pass attempts per game. He should be averaging over 30 pass attempts per game, not maxing out at under 30. Justin Herbert didn't hit 180 passing yards in any of those first 4 games. However, they had the week 5 bye. They come out in week 6. Herbert ends up hitting season highs in completions, attempts, and passing yards. And it was in a leading game script. So, they were up early and by a decent amount against the Broncos. So the fact that they, let him at least unleash it a little bit through the air was encouraging. They didn't go as insanely run heavy as they had through the first 4 weeks. Like, I understand the Chargers want to run the ball, but Justin Herbert is by far their best player. He's going to need the ball in his hands more than what we saw early on in the season. And so for McConkey here, I really do think it's just a matter of time before he goes on a tear. I talk about this a lot, but when these young players show you that they're talented, you should believe them. Like through 5 games, I think Ladd McConkey is a very, very good NFL wide receiver. He just needs the volume to go up a little bit here. He needs some bigger passing games. And I do think, those are ahead here for the Chargers. So I think Ladd McConkey's only going to get better. I do think later on in the season, he could emerge as like a solid weekly wide receiver 3. And towards the end, he might have one of those big rookie tears to end the season where he's playable as like a wide receiver 2 rest of season. So I like Ladd McConkey here, and I like him as a buy low. And that's going to wrap it up for my 3 buy low players here: Travis Etienne, David Njoku, and Ladd McConkey. If you guys enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.